Hi there, my name is Kyle Yoder. I'm the Associate Research Director at CEIR, the Center for Election Innovation and Research. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this presentation on how Connecticut elections are run, why they're secure, transparent, and accessible, what voters need to know in order to cast their ballot, and what they need to know in order to trust that their ballot will be counted as they intended. I'm going to try and keep this briefing pretty quick, just answering all the questions you need to know and we're too afraid to ask about elections in Connecticut. But just as a quick roadmap here so you know where we're going, we're going to start with who runs elections in Connecticut, what voters need to know in order to cast their ballot, what they should know about trusting that their ballot was counted as they intended, and then I'm going to share some slides with some resources to keep learning more here at CEIR. So to start us off, who runs elections in Connecticut? At the state level, we have the Secretary of State's office. That's Secretary, no, I'm gonna take it from the top again. So who runs elections in Connecticut? At the state level, we have the Secretary of State's office, and at the local level, each one of the 169 municipalities has their own town clerk and registrar of voters who are taking responsibilities for elections in their particular municipality. And to drive that number home, there are 169 municipalities within the state of Connecticut. On this map, you can see the outlines of counties. As those of you in the state know, those outlines are more or less just lines on a page, lines on a map. The municipalities really are the ones in charge of running elections where they are. And so each of those towns has its own registrar of voters. That's who voters should be going to for any questions that they have about voting in their area. They can access the contact information, find their town clerk at the link at the bottom of this slide. Moving right along, let's talk about what voters need to know in order to cast their vote in whichever town or municipality that they find themselves. So 2026, our major election dates here, we've got the primary election coming up in August, on August 11th. The deadline to request a mail ballot is August 10th, so up until that Monday before, we don't necessarily recommend that you request a ballot be sent to you in the mail the day before the election. Mail takes time, but you can go into your local office to request a ballot, or as we'll talk about, just go and cast your ballot early in person or on election day if you're thinking that late in the game. Early in person dates, by the way, are August 3rd through the 9th for that primary election. If you're looking ahead to the November 3rd general election, that is nationwide that date. Tuesday, November 3rd is the general election in all 50 states. In Connecticut, that deadline to request your mail ballot is going to be Monday, November 2nd. Of course, we don't recommend that voters wait until the day before the election to request a mail ballot. They have other options available, fortunately, such as early in-person voting available in Connecticut between October 19th and November 1st for that general election. In terms of what to expect on their ballot once they get to the polling place, in the primary and general election, we have races for the House of Representatives, governor and lieutenant governor, state senate, state representatives, judges of probate. At the general election only, folks should expect to see the Secretary of State, Treasurer, Comptroller, Attorney General, and Registrar of Voters on the ballot. Those races with asterisks under general election only are appearing on the general election only this year because they are running uncontested in their primaries. In a normal year, you might expect them to see them both, but voters should not be surprised if they don't see them on their primary ballot this August. In terms of voter registration and options to register to vote, the last day to register online or by mail for each of these elections is on screen now. For the primary here in August, voters must advance register by July 24th. That's either submitted online, by mail to your office, or in the mail postmarked by July 24th. For that general election, that date is October 16th. Voters also, though, can register in person. So if they want to register in advance of the election, the deadline to do so is August 10th for the primary. Again, that August 11th primary. The deadline to do so for the general is October 16th. But fortunately for the general election, voters also have the option to same-day register. So if they go in person at an early voting location, voters in Connecticut can register to vote and cast a ballot at the same time at that early voting location or in person on election day. Voters should take advantage of the link at the bottom. This link should get shared out as much as possible so that voters can check their registration, get themselves registered online, and make sure everything is good to go in order to cast their ballot this summer and fall. Just to put those methods in context, this is a map from a recent report that we just put out here. You can access it on our website at the link below. But this is a comparison of available various innovative voter registration methods across the 50 states and DC. Connecticut there is in green, as you can see. They have all of the available methods that we are measuring across the states. Online voter registration options, that same-day registration option I just talked about. And in the background, working behind the scenes in all of this is automatic voter registration. When Connecticut folks living in Connecticut go to the DMV or other eligible government agencies, their information is captured, sent to the election office to make sure that their voter registration stays as up to date as possible, and they don't have to worry so much about forgetting to update their address, leading to something down the line. That information is shared with the election office to the benefit of voters in Connecticut. One last thing to note about registration for the primary election here in August in Connecticut is that Connecticut primaries are closed, meaning you have to be affiliated with a party in order to vote in that party's primary election. But not to worry, any voters who are currently unaffiliated can still affiliate with a party in order to vote in the primary election. So Connecticut voters should know that regardless of their status, it is not too late, they can still vote in the primary. They had the option to affiliate with a political party when they registered to vote. If they already did that, that is the party that they should expect to vote the ballot on come the primary election when they go here in July or August to cast their ballot, either in person or by mail for this primary this summer. The deadline to change your party affiliation in that case has already passed. It was in May. But if a voter in Connecticut is not yet affiliated with a party, they have until the day before the primary election by noon to go in person, update their voter registration, affiliate with a party, and cast a ballot in that primary election. That's Monday, August 10th. Or if they want to change their affiliation, affiliate with a party online or by mail, they have until 18 days before the primary election in order to do so. That's later this month in July. And again, just want to reemphasize that Connecticut voters all across the board can still vote in their primaries. And if they have not yet affiliated with a political party, it's not too late to do so. They can still cast their ballot come August, so long as they take steps to update their registration. Let's turn now to talking about voting before Election Day. So this is another map from one of CEIR's resources comparing the expansion of voting before Election Day. If you go to our website, to the link at the bottom, you can see how this has changed over time since the 2000 election. But this is a snapshot of where things stand as of now, as of 2026, going into this election season. And you can see that Connecticut is one of the many, many states across the board who provide all voters the option to vote early in person or by mail. Those are the green states that you see here. This, of course, is a recent change in Connecticut. This is the first election season where all Connecticut voters have the ability to cast a ballot by mail, not including the little asterisk for the temporary accommodations that were made during COVID in response to an illness or emergency. Let's highlight that key legislative change here a little bit more. The HB 5001 passed earlier this year, provides absentee voting for all and various other reforms related to the administration of elections. So it removed the excuse requirements to vote absentee by mail. It established a ballot cure process. It modified timelines for pre-processing of ballots, and it authorized the Attorney General to take action to prevent or resolve any interference in federal elections. All of these are currently in effect and in effect for both the primary and the general this year. There are also a couple of other provisions. It will require risk limiting audits, which is just a particular form of audits. Connecticut already audits, and this just updates that process and procedure. Takes a little bit more time to implement, so that one's going in effect in January. And then it has various other effective dates for various other provisions that are related to absentee voting, training for election officials, election-related crimes and penalties, and more. If you're interested, you can read all about it at by looking at this legislation here on screen. What voters need to know, though, is that absentee voting by mail, bottom line, is now available to all Connecticut voters. To vote absentee by mail, voters must submit an absentee ballot application. They can do that by mail, online, or in person. Voters with a disability now have the option to join a permanent absentee list. They don't have to request a ballot for every election. They can ask to be added to that list at the portal that you see at the bottom, and any other voter can go and request their mail ballot at the portal at the link that you see at the bottom of the screen. All voters may request to automatically receive absentee ballot applications for each election, regardless of whether or not they are a part of that permanent absentee list. The deadline for requesting your absentee ballot, August 10th, is the deadline for a primary. Again, that's the day before. We don't recommend waiting until the day before to request to receive a ballot in the mail. But you do have the option to request that ballot. If you are requesting that ballot, highly recommend that you go in person. You can also go, of course, during in-person early voting or on election day to request that ballot. General guidance is to request your mail ballot at least a week before the election, but the law does allow for folks to request it later than that, should anything arise at the last minute. November 2nd be the date there for the general election. After you have filled out your ballot by mail as a voter and you are mailing it back, that ballot must be received by election officials by the close of polls on election day, and ballots that are returned in person to the clerk must be received by the day before election day. So make sure that ballots are back in the hands of election officials by election day. Again, 1 week out is generally the guidance that we offer to folks about when to mail your ballots back if you're voting by mail. Any later than that, if you still have your ballot in hand, highly recommend going in person to an office or other voting locations so you can physically hand that ballot to an election official and drop it off. Talking about voting early in person, since 2023, this has been available to all registered voters in the state of Connecticut. Here in the primary, those dates are August 3rd to August 9th. In the general, those dates will be October 19th to November 1st. And early voting locations and hours can be found at this link that you see on screen. A key legislative change to note here is HB 7287, which passed and is now in effect. Requires any municipality that has at least 1,000 on-campus college residents to have an on-site early voting location at that college campus. It also requires any registrars to designate a curbside voting location at every polling place. So individuals who have mobility issues or other disabilities who are not able to get out of their vehicle are able to take advantage of this curbside voting at every polling place. And lastly, these last two bullets here establish a translation advisory committee to validate the translation of election-related materials into languages other than English. And the bill also includes other provisions related to absentee voting, same-day registration, translations, probate judge vacancies that you can all find by looking up the text of the legislation that you see here on screen. Finally, let's talk about voting on election day. So primary election day, again, we said this date a few times, Tuesday, August 11th. General election day, Tuesday, November 3rd. Voters on election day for both the primary and the general must vote at their assigned polling location. Polls are open statewide from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Voters in line by 8 p.m. will be able to cast a ballot, just stay in line. And voters can find all the information they need in order to do so at the link that you see here on screen. So before I let you go, I want to also talk about what voters need to know to trust the count, specifically as it pertains to the state of Connecticut. Highlights here at the beginning, all voters must sign a legally binding statement swearing eligibility, including citizenship, when they register to vote. This is true of every state where registration is required, and it's true here in Connecticut. Election officials also check records regularly for eligibility. They remove any ineligible voters. This is a process called list maintenance. It is ongoing, 365 days a year. Election officials are very vigilant. You can find resources on our website talking more about everything that goes into this process of list maintenance and just how thorough and complete it is in every state, including Connecticut. Election officials also check voters' identity when they vote. You have to sign in and attest to your identity in Connecticut. There's also checks on mail ballots, sending in that information. pre-processing, verifying the identity of every mail ballot that is received. And then audits after every election, double check the counts, make sure that everything went according to plan, everything is above board, and flagging any issues and fixing those issues if and when they do arise. Paper ballots are also key here for those audits. In 2026, all Connecticut votes will be cast on paper. As a side note, this is true of 98% of votes nationally. Only one state, there's only one state this is not true in, that is the state of Louisiana, and they are working towards updating their systems and processes. But hand-marked paper ballots, ballot marking devices are in use across the state of Connecticut, all in accordance with state law, all producing a paper ballot of record for those checks, for those recounts, for those audits, so that we have a physical piece of paper for every ballot cast, documenting exactly how that ballot was cast, and allowing for further investigation as necessary, for checks as necessary, for auditing as necessary, so that we know at the end of the day that we can trust the count that is announced. For anything more on paper ballots in Connecticut, voting machines, all of that, I highly recommend our peer organization, Verified Voting. We've provided a link here at the bottom that you can go and check out their materials and tools on this topic. I also want to talk about Connecticut's process of pre-processing mail ballots. Election officials verify the voter's identity for every mail ballot that they receive before they count any votes. Registrars can begin verifying voter identity the day after absentee ballots are issued. Ballot scanning begins on election day. What this means is that as soon as those ballots are received back by voters, by the election officials from voters, they can take a look at the information on the outside of the envelope, the signature, the attestation of their identity, verify that the ballot came from who they say it came from, and then get that ready for scanning. Scanning happens on election day. No counts are made or released until after polls close. Everything is kept very tight, very succinct, to make sure that all of that is kept locked until polls are closed. If officials need any more information to confirm a voter's identity after they check those signatures on the outside of the envelope, they can notify that voter and ask them to come and provide it. This is a process called ballot cure. This is also a new and newly revamped process in the state under the new universal absentee voting law that was passed. If you want more, I highly recommend you check out the legislation that we talked about earlier to get details there. Last thing I want to talk about is the time to count the votes. This is perennially something that we see a lot of discussion and discourse about, but I want to really emphasize that counting ballots takes time, especially when you have so many races down the ballot. We went through everything earlier that's on the ballot that Connecticut voters can expect. And state officials certify those statewide and multi-town results after all local offices have reported. That takes time for the state. We shouldn't be surprised if official results take days or weeks after, just to leave time for ballot cure, as we mentioned, ballot education, reconciliative tallies, other routine checks, processes to make sure that all of those counts are correct. We've talked about some of this already. You can also go and check out this resource on our website, What Happens After We Vote. Link is at the bottom of the screen to learn more about all of the things that Connecticut election officials are doing behind the scenes to verify the count, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's complete, and make sure that we can trust the results that are coming out. Recounts can, of course, then take place after the local or state canvass, adding more time to all of this. That's not evidence of wrongdoing, that's evidence of thoroughness, accuracy, and trustworthiness. Last but not least, while I have your ear, please, if you're in Connecticut or you're speaking to voters in Connecticut, encourage them to sign up to be a poll worker. Anyone who has any doubts about the election process should serve as a poll worker. It's the best way to get hands-on experience in your state, working with elections, see all of these processes firsthand, and really get a feel for just how secure and accessible and good our election system is. Highly recommend anyone with any doubts, or just anyone who wants to give back to the community and serve democracy, sign up to be a poll worker at the link on screen. I just said all that. Finally, learning more. I said I would provide more resources here at the end. This is a link, a series of links to various resources that journalists and voters in the state of Connecticut should know about, should access, should not hesitate to take advantage of to learn more. You can also learn more at our website, electioninnovation.org/research. to learn more about all the topics that I've talked about today and a lot more about the ins and outs of election administration voting. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you have about elections in Connecticut.